Welcome to the Purpose-Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Welcome back to the Purpose-Focused Advisor. Exciting day today. This is episode number 100. And I can tell you that it wasn't that long ago that 100 seemed like a long ways away, but we're here. So here we are. Rob Brown, your host, along with my co-host, Phil Calandra. Welcome to episode number 100. I feel like we ought to have some fireworks noise going on in the background.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. 100 episodes, that's a milestone. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's a big milestone, and it's just great to get there and just continue to see the podcast gain momentum. So what Phil and I thought we would do today is not invite a guest onto the podcast and talk about some of our best takeaways from having done 99 other episodes. And the way we want to frame the conversation today is the idea that this is kind of a unique business. There are so many different avenues to success. You can run your business in lots of different ways as a financial advisor and do a great job of growing a business, taking care of clients, doing all sorts of other things. And there's so many different approaches, but under the surface, there are some core things that those who are most successful do over and over again. And if you're wondering about what those successful things might be, go to truistfan.com/scorecard and go through the business optimization process, this little scorecard for helping you kind of analyze some of the things that Phil and I will talk about during this episode. But Phil, put the scorecard aside for now. What do you say about that? Because you were the one that really brought this up, that you notice how many different ways advisors go about building their business and doing things. And that's not the way it is in other industries.
Yeah, no, that's what came to my mind when we were thinking about the topic today. I celebrated 20 years in this business last month, and I reflect back on it and I look at some things that I did very, very well, some things that I did poorly. But the realization is that in the financial services industry, there's just almost infinite number of routes that someone could take to their definition of success. Some do it with from the insurance angle or insurance annuity. Some do it fee-based. Some do it fee-only. So take out the complete complexity of products, financial planning, decision-making that we would go through. Take that aside, and you still have another infinite number of ways that we either get to where we want to go as business owners, as practitioners. And after 20 years, it still boggles my mind. And I know you've seen it, and you have probably 10 years on me, right, Rob?
Yeah, I think I've got a couple more than 10 years on you, Phil. But there's not a 0 or a 5 at the end of those years. So there's no reason to celebrate it like we should celebrate your 20 years. No, it's so true. And I'm just thinking about some of the more recent episodes that I have done with some more experienced advisors who haven't grown up in the industry of the last 10 years where there is this focus on a fiduciary fee-based practice, and that there's only one way, to kind of go about things, which is, kind of a very narrow way of thinking about things for some younger advisors, and not even younger is not the right word. It goes back more than a couple of years, but who maybe got into the business because they were selling life insurance,
Yeah.
and they've turned a life insurance practice into a practice where they serve their clients with integrity, with a real fiduciary responsibility, even though it might not fall under the pure definition of fiduciary by
Right.
the whoever it is that says that they know the way to be a fiduciary. So it can be very different.
Yeah, that's apparent. But I do think that at the core of everybody building a successful business is the intentionality. The way that you do it is going to look different. But you all, or most successful advisors, have this core component you mentioned, and I think it's intentionality. First and foremost, whether you call yourself a fiduciary or not, it's that the client experience, the the what you're trying to deliver, which is successful client outcomes as they define it. It's done with that intentionality, and that takes a little bit of effort. Actually, it takes a lot of effort, especially when you're starting a practice from scratch or breaking away, whatever that may be. But I think that's the intentionality of success.
Yeah, no, I think that is absolutely right. I don't think we've talked to anybody as a guest on this podcast, or I've worked with anybody as a coach where the business is continuously growing and succeeding when there isn't intentionality behind it, where there is a very clear picture of what success looks like for that business based on what that advisor wants to do for the type of clients that he or she chooses to serve, and that intentionality becomes so important. When you aren't intentional, you just end up with the pile of stuff, and maybe you can make some
Right.
decent money, because you're a good networker or whatever, but you end up with a lifestyle business that is supporting a lifestyle that you don't really enjoy, or a business model that isn't sustainable. And I think that's where that intentionality piece really comes into play.
Yeah, I think it's everybody that has a practice that they've built over time that wasn't done intentionally. For example, we hear a lot about specific niches, or the what's the saying? The riches are in the niches. Really deciding who your ideal client is. And that sounds well and good. The young practitioner, the young advisor, maybe not by age, but just by tenure in the business, they start to take on a lot of clients. If fog a mirror, they come in, right? You got to make a living. But like you said, Rob, then you end up with this book of business that really doesn't get you. You certainly don't get them. You have a lot of the vampire clients, I call them. They're just always sucking. And then you have the PETA clients, the pain in the what. And that becomes very, very complicated for a solo practitioner. So that's kind of the one side. If you're trying to build a lifestyle practice by yourself, if you have those unintentional, unideal, or non-ideal clients, and you've scaled it with multiple advisors and teams. I know you have always worked really well with us in our firm about, how we're managing with the team and how important the team is. But it wouldn't matter if you're just a solo operator, solopreneur, or if your business is being scaled with multiple advisors and multiple client service, client relations, operations people.
Yeah, a couple of great points there. And I was just thinking about your comment about starting a practice and saying, I'm just going to take anybody who comes my way because some clients are better than no clients. And
Right.
that happens a lot early in careers, but that also can continue for years and years and years. Because how many times have we heard advisors say, my clients have nothing in common. I just take anybody who comes along, or I don't have a minimum. Yet we know
Right.
that whether you're starting a practice or you're trying to get to that next level of success, if you can continuously better define who it is you want to work with, what makes them special or unique that you can connect to them, even if it doesn't feel like a niche at first,
Yeah.
and then elevate that to a level of what it requires for them to have, for them to be able to work with you, not because you are trying to unnecessarily exclude people, but because you can't serve everybody. Those things need to continuously develop, and that is, I think, at the core of this idea of being intentional and consistently thinking, how can I be more intentional, or live out the intention that I set out to build when I started my practice, or when I look to the next 20 years of my business.
Yeah, and I think back on 20 years too, you know, the different ways that a business evolves and builds. So, when you're starting out new in the business, I don't want to say you take on anybody, but you will stretch the guise of what your ideal client is. Because you have a mortgage, that's the old saying. If I have a mortgage to pay, I've got to find somebody else that can help me pay it, because I don't have a salary. I'm not a W-2 employee. I'm a business owner. So, that's the whole dilemma with commission-based business, right? If you're a commission-driven advisor, then the first of every month you're basically unemployed. You need to go make that commission dollar. If you're a fee only or fee-based somewhat advisor, that the retention game that's everything to be able to maintain the client relationship. So they each have their own different dynamics. And I'm not suggesting one is better than the other, because there are a lot of different ways. So, when we were talking about that intentionality, I think it also comes back to what's important about the business and the money to you as the advisor. We ask our clients all the time. We help them develop their own financial plan. And I look back on the years and years that I didn't have a financial plan myself. And I was like, what is it that I'm trying to do? What's really important to Phil and to Trish, and what were we trying to build for ourselves and our family? And it would have been a lot more, I would have said, it would have been a more elegant life if we had intentionality around that, the same way we have the intentionality around, what we do for our clients. It's like, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. How true is that? So kind of step back and look at yourself sometimes. It can go a long way if we do that.
Yeah, there's so many ways to kind of feed this idea of being intentional, and sometimes it's really kind of looking at what it is we are actually doing, whether it's in our own lives or for our clients. Because I want to say, kind of next to intentionality, the second kind of common theme that we see through these 99 episodes is that advisors who have a dedicated client experience always work with greater purpose, have more success, grow better businesses, because that client experience is there. And it's not the advisor who is unwilling to look at themselves and say, I told my clients that I was going to meet with them 4 times a year, but most of the time when we call them to come in, they don't even want to see us. And so,
Right.
so that's another part of that introspection and being intentional, saying, what do I do for myself? But what is really happening with my clients? Did I set up a business where I had one client service model, and now we've fallen away from that, not because we're trying to get away with anything. It's because we haven't consistently thought about how we can improve it and evolve it in a way that stays true to the way that we believe that we want to really take care of our clients.
Yeah, and depending on the service model or depending on what you want to deliver, um, you know, you said it, I believe, is in many instances they won't have that quarterly call with you. I still have very good clients that I probably don't even have the annual meeting. Does that make me a bad advisor? No, it's just the frequency of direction, the frequency of contact with that client doesn't necessarily call for a one-on-one. Now, that doesn't mean I don't communicate, because as you know, I send out weekly memos. So my client knows that I'm there. I can see if they open my email or they don't open my email, but I had a call with a client just this morning, and I haven't talked to him probably in 16, 18 months. I said, Ray, is there anything that I need to do for you, or is there anything that you need to update me on? He's like, no, I know where you are. Everything is running fine. The plan is the plan. I'm going to vote tomorrow. If you're listening to the podcast, this is, we're the day before the election. He's like, no, I know exactly. Yeah. He's like, if I need you, I know where you are. So that's great. I know what the client experience is for him, and I know what his expectation is. So every client is unique in that way, and the advisor has to be prepared to, because if I required this client, Ray, who's been with me probably for 9, 10 years, if I was to put a quarterly meeting on the calendar, it's never going to happen. I mean, well, it'd be great to see him. We could have coffee and, we'd make him cookies when he comes in the office, but he doesn't need that.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point, because when I use the example of the 4 quarterly meetings a year, maybe too often, and that might date me, because that probably isn't as common today as it was back in the glacier ages. But what you said, Phil, is that you have a system for regularly letting your clients know that you are thinking about them, and they know that they have a plan that you're keeping up with on their behalf, and they know how to get in touch with you if something comes up in the interim. And so your combination of proactive communication, but ability to react and be available when somebody needs you, is a fundamental part of your client experience. And then you layer on top of that, for some clients who do want or need more regular face-to-face meetings, whether it's virtual or in person, that you have that in there too. But it's intentional. You didn't get to where you are by accident. You didn't make your client of 10 years who doesn't want to come in and meet with you every year to do an annual review do that. But you're also not assuming that client that you're working with that has $7 million doesn't want to meet with you on a more regular basis. And it's intentional. And I think that is that intentionality of that client experience. And I just thought about something, Phil. We were trying to date each other. We've got Podcast 100. You've been 20 years in the industry. And I said, I don't have a 0 or a 5 year to celebrate. I actually do. This year is actually the 10th year anniversary of my first book, Delivering the Ultimate Client Experience. So I feel particularly like an expert right now in suggesting that client experience is crucial across that spectrum of different ways to deliver or build a financial advisory practice.
That's good. I think I first got my hands on that book, Rob, probably in we started working together long before COVID, so probably 2018, 19. So that's 5 years into the book launch. So, hey, and that's a great book. I still have it on the bookshelf. I think I still use, of all the things that I got out of that book, was probably the surveys. Mm-hmm. I still use some of that format in my annual client surveys.
Yeah.
And they're sent out by snail mail with a stamp on them, even to this day. So, thanks for that book.
I was having lunch with an advisor the other day who went on for 10 minutes about how much he got from my book, and I was like, gosh, I didn't realize you could learn that from reading Truest Fan. He goes, no. It was the other book, and he couldn't even name the title. But he goes, I can picture it. It's got the the black letters and the ladder on the cover. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, you can go to deliveringtheultimateclientexperience.com and pick up a copy. It's free. You just have to pay to have it mailed to you. But it's a great core book that talks about client experience.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that a lot of advisors that I think about in coaching and how we've had conversations, not just the client experience, but the onboarding and even pre-onboarding. So more of the sales process, being very intentional about how you communicate what it is that you do. What is it that you say you're going to do? What is it that differentiates the way you do it? And having a consistent way to say it. We call it the signature solution. I've seen variations of that. There's software now that can help you put it together. I would say that single thing could build intentionality around, like we're talking about the client experience or intentionality, the sales experience, or if you're too uppity to say that you're a salesperson in this industry, I don't know, people don't like that. I'm a sales guy. If you're a consultant, your consulting process could probably be refined with more intentionality. And that clears the picture. It clears the path for the client to then enter your domain, your world in the right way, which then sets the stage for the client experience and delivering the ultimate client experience over and over and over for years to come.
Yeah.
So
no, that's absolutely right. I was talking with a client today who wants to enter a new market. And he said, well, what would you suggest that I do? And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is to create your roadmap for the problem that you're trying to solve, how you're going to help potential clients in that market. We call that point A in the signature solution, which might be a point of uncertainty or scatteredness or just confusion to get to their point B, which is the outcome, accomplishing the goals and having the regular relationship that you want. And he goes, well, I didn't have a signature solution when I first got started in my core business. Why would I start with one now? And I said, did your business
That's why.
better after you created your signature solution, or was it better before? And then he realized that he asked maybe although there are never silly questions, that maybe that one was a little silly. And it's that's just part of our coaching process. Is we really believe you have to have a unique way of helping somebody understand what you're selling, even if selling is a bad word for you. Maybe it's consultative selling. What's the tool that you use to help people accomplish their greatest goals? And so, by the way, if you're on the podcast and you're saying, hey, that sounds like a great idea, how do I create a signature solution? Go to truestfancoaching.com and look for the ways that we could potentially work together. But Phil, I interrupted you with my commercial. What were you going to add to that?
No, what I was going to add to that is because I came from a product background, right? I started as a life insurance agent selling product. Your sales process or your consulting process can center around your product very easily. But when you're a fee-only advisor and financial planning, we evolved our practice to be that. And there are a lot of different types of advisors listening to the podcast, but you have to productize your advice as opposed to selling a product. If you're selling life insurance, that's pretty simple. Your sales process revolves around Maybe it's whole life, universal life, second to die, deferred comp, buy sell agreement. That's your product. If you're selling annuities, right, that's your product. You're selling around guaranteed lifetime income, guarantee of principal, a death benefit rider. But when you're in financial planning or investment management, very rarely did I see a successful outcome if I was trying to then productize the Vanguard 500. No, different conversation. So then you productize or create your signature solution, as we call it. That's called other things in other circles, but you're selling then or productizing your offer. And that makes all the difference in the world, because it sets the stage for the onboarding of the client to be done properly. And then with proper onboarding, you can get to proper outcome. If you have a breakdown in any of those three, the sales process, the onboarding process, and the client experience, if you have a single breakdown, I would say in any of those three, you don't have a business.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And when you use that word productizing, for some advisors, that is as slimy sounding as selling. But the truth is, and even if your the way that you get paid is through selling products, in all cases, the reason that I think the word productizing is so important is because that productizing that comes from having a signature solution is you are selling the way that you help your clients solve for what's important to them. And you may have different ways of doing it. And I know there are people listening to podcasts who are saying, well, gosh, how could you do that with life insurance? Well, there are lots of really scammy things that you can do with life insurance, and unfortunately have been done to lots of different people. But a really good life insurance person who has a planning focus can be valuable, because it's not like nobody needs life insurance.
That's right.
And the same with creating a fee-based financial plan. The plan is worthless if it isn't executed on, and it has to usually be executed on with a product, so to speak, and
tools.
So
it's like playing around a golf. You have to have the golf clubs to play around a golf, but the golf club doesn't really make a better round of golf. The swing makes a better round of golf.
Right. And so to kind of go back to the theme of this podcast, or this episode of the podcast, is that when we think, and Phil and I talked about this before we got started, about what we have learned from talking to so many advisors doing this podcast, and also from the coaching work and interacting with other advisors, is it's crazy how many different ways you can approach building your business. But under the surface, what you really need to do is you need to be intentional. You really need to decide what it is you are trying to do through your business, who you are trying to serve, how you are going to serve them, and do that in the best way possible, in their best interest. And if you do those things at the core, and then add one more thing in, this is also extremely important. How are you going to build your team? So number 3, you've got to think about how you're going to build your team, even if it's only going to be a team of 2 or a team of 5, or if you're going to spread out and build a team of 25 or 50. You've got to have the right people in the right seats on the bus. And it's another thing that you have to be intentional about.
Yeah. I think that when we look at business building, the dilemma always for the advisor, the business owner, is, when do I add that next person? When do I add the next advisor? And I think back of all the things that I could have done in scaling my business, is I was pretty much the only advisor the whole entire time. I didn't really have the desire to add more advisors. I don't know how the outcome would have changed or shifted if I had. There's a lot of functions that would go into that. But I always felt really good, and you probably know where I'm going with this. I always felt 110% confident about my operations flow, about the client's service that I was going to deliver. That's just because I had, the rock star Trish Overton, now Trish Calandra. So I had an advantage because we built it together over the years. But yeah, having the right team and having somebody to help you direct the team creation, having almost like a team whisperer there that can help you. I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, it's so important. When I think about some of the advisors that I have worked with who have gone from being solo practitioners doing everything on their own, and how hard it was for them to add that first part-time employee, now having 10 or 12. I'm thinking about one client who now has 12 team members. And the one thing that we have consistently grown is he's grown that practice from 70 million to, he's probably 510 million now in AUM. Is that we have been very deliberate about defining what those roles are that are needed, and how that person in that role will do their job, and making sure that we aren't trying to replicate the advisor in every seat, because you only need one of him. But you need other people who can work with him and really do that that teamwork in a way that, again, as I said earlier, that you have the right people on the right seats on the bus. I think that was the was that
that's
great was the right seats on the
bus. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Phil.
So good.
Kind of land the
good.
plane. Episode 100 is almost in the books. It has been great having this conversation and thinking about the fact that we've done our first 100 episodes. Hopefully there are many hundreds to come. I appreciate you and our partnership in doing so many of these episodes together. And to our audience, thank you all for listening. We wouldn't do it if you weren't out there listening. And remember, we are rooting for your success. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truestfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.